So hello, everyone. Here we are for another episode of Jewish Wisdom for Coping with the Pandemic. It looks like, we've had our little COVID trough and now we're starting to tick up again. So here we remain indefinitely. And it's really been a nice community that's grown over the last couple of years. It's a drop-in group, so I know some people, you're here for your first time, and some people have been here dozens of times. So our tradition is we begin with a short meditation to help create a sacred space. So please close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling and exhaling, if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass. Like watching a car pass on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. On your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema. Listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema. Listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, I see we've been joined by Phyllis and by Janet during the meditation. Hello, welcome, welcome. So today we are going to be doing the first of 2 weeks looking at the soul trait. The Hebrew for this soul trait is called Yirah. I very rarely use the Hebrew terms, but this one really doesn't have a direct English translation. It can be translated as either fear or awe. This is toward the end of the book. And over the next 2 weeks, we'll be completing this, which will be our third Mussar cycle. Then we're going to be we'll have a break for a couple of weeks where I will be on vacation. And then when we come back, we shall be beginning a new cycle, which will probably be going back to humility. I might mix things up and use some other materials as well. I haven't quite figured that out, but that's kind of where we are for the next month or so. So today, as I say, we're going to be looking at one of the two meanings, which is fear of consequences. And I think it's helpful to kind of look at these two separately because we can, I think by looking at them separately, we can learn a little bit more about the whole. So as our kind of opening conversation point, we have this quote from Proverbs. Would someone like to unmute and read this, please?
The prudent person sees trouble ahead and hides, but the naive continue on and suffer the consequences.
Thank you, Joanne. Okay, so I will copy this to the chat. So this is from Proverbs. So just to try to sort of understand without interpreting, what is this saying? How does this speak to you? You think they're trying to teach Janet?
I think it's backwards. I really
It's
don't think it's right. The
okay.
prudent person sees trouble ahead and works to try to prevent it.
Okay.
The,
Yeah.
the naive person shrugs her head. The naive person either retreats in fear or just says, oh, well, I'll just forge ahead. Whatever happens, happens. So I'm sorry I'm quarreling with the Bible, but hey, we Jews are allowed to do that, right?
We certainly are. We certainly
But
are.
I think
Israel
I,
means God wrestler, so we can wrestle with this. So you're just objecting to the, you'd like to see a prudent person maybe trying to prevent things,
Mm.
and as opposed to just turning away. Okay, fair enough. Martin, what is your thoughts? So please remember to unmute.
I agree with Janet. It's the prudent person would not hide. I don't know how that, hiding, then the prudent person can't use prudence. That's my comment.
Right. So what if the prudent person sees a tsunami coming?
Okay, so if a prudent person sees and hides, so that's physically getting out of danger. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah. I mean, they're looking ahead and they're like, oh, I have to take some
Okay.
steps to get out of the way of this thing.
Okay, so I guess we need to I need to be clear on when I say hide. Does hide mean put your hand in the sand? So that would not be appropriate for a tsunami problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think perhaps, and I'd be curious what the Hebrew word is, which I don't have handy. It probably is hide, but I suspect it's along the lines of taking some kind of action. You're walking down the street, you see somebody you see a bunch of Roman soldiers, and you can just tell they've been drinking and they're looking to pick on some Jews. So, you can go continue on your way and hope for the best, or you can duck into a store or go in the other direction and avoid the trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, Karen.
So I would say that the prudent person who hides is not necessarily hiding in the simple sense of the word's definition, but hiding from confrontation. And in that way, being savvy and prudent about offering distance and perspective to know how to handle it, whether you get out of the way or you find a way to approach it. And that someone who is naive may just walk into a difficult situation because they don't perceive it as confrontational or difficult.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point. So there's something about kind of perception and just really even understanding if this is a challenging situation. Like I was when I was in the corporate world, there was some issue. I was a product manager, I was in marketing, and there was an issue with the product that I was managing. And the sales team wanted me to be the one to speak to the customers and explain to them what happened. And the guy who was the vice president in charge of my unit, and I agreed to do this. And he said to me, Greg, can't you see they're setting you up for failure? they're unwilling to be the bearer of bad news. That's actually their job. They get paid a lot of money when they sell these things. And part of the deal is you have to navigate, when trouble comes up. But they've set things up so that if the sale is lost or the customer's lost, they can blame you because you're the one that talked to them. So I was pretty early in my career, and that's sort of how I resonate with this, right? Just kind of naively went along and said, okay, yeah, sure, I'll be the hero. I'll talk to these people. And, fortunately, for me, or unfortunately, perhaps, because I probably would have been better getting fired from that job because it was so toxic and stressful. But nonetheless, those conversations went okay. But as I got older, I got much more savvy about and the key word for me is consequences in this, is to sort of figure out, well, where is this going? Like what could happen from this situation? And I think that is, that sort of, have other people had experiences like that, where maybe you saw trouble ahead and were able to divert or prepare for it in some way, or he just kind of walked blindly into a situation where it was like, oh man, I wish I thought ahead a little bit. Yeah, Karen.
I'm thinking there are a lot of examples that can be found in family interactions and gaslighting, whether accidental or on purpose. That gives us a great opportunity to see how being prudent would work. We don't necessarily need to hide from the situation, but we need to hide from immediate confrontation, from our immediate reaction, so that we can have time to think. And should we be naive, we could enable or escalate a situation that we don't want to do.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. So family interactions, absolutely thinking things through, figuring out, how to navigate situations like that. Absolutely important. Thank you. Janet.
I thought of a couple of cases, one with hiding, and that has to do with the Holocaust. There were people who thought that because of their experience in World War I, that the Nazis would never come after them. There were people who got the hell out of Dodge and either hid or left or did something. But I also thought of something else, and that is there's an expression in the Army, never volunteer. You've probably heard that one. I did not serve, but you don't want to you don't want to be the fall guy. As I who often is.
Yeah, so there's certain volunteering can come with a certain risk, especially in an Army situation. Other thoughts or reactions? All right, well, let's dig in a little bit deeper. Okay, so some weeks we look at one of the 4 assumptions for an American Mussar practice. And the one that I think is interesting here, when we're talking about fear of consequences or fears, is this idea that we're driven by the conflict between the evil inclination and the good inclination. And we can think of these certainly correspond to different parts of the brain, the hindbrain, the reptilian brain, where there's all of our emotions, and there's, our selfish impulses. So it's not, evil inclination is not a great translation of the Hebrew. It's just the best one that I know of. It's not like murderous, evil type stuff. And the good inclination is more of the collaborative spirit, compassion, reason. And our goal is really to find a way to guide the evil inclination, through the good inclination, because these sorts of drives and emotions are very much a part of who we are, and these aren't things that we can do without. So, any comments on that? On just kind of this idea of the conflict between the evil inclination and the good inclination? Yeah, Martin.
So one example, I think, of a good inclination was that, let's just say you see someone walking across the street and they're not paying attention. It looks hazardous. So it's I would automatically, as long as I didn't feel I was in mortal danger, I would reach out and pull that person back. So there's a good inclination. However, I also believe there's a selfish motivation to that, because if I did not do it, I would feel horrible. So maybe those are simultaneous responses. So yeah, but that would be, my first reaction was to save, but there'd be a consequence if I didn't do it.
Yeah, well, I think like having a conscience is part of the good inclination. It's like, if you were a sociopath and you didn't care if someone got injured in front of you, then that would be not a place we want to be. So I think that's a great example, Martin. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Joanne.
This is going to sound a little silly, but what popped into my head is the song about Santa Claus is coming to town. You better not lie. You better not, I'm telling you, he sees you when you're sleeping. So that's, I guess, also about having a conscience. But they're also they also say that if there was no evil inclination, maybe people wouldn't strive as hard on their goals, and maybe they wouldn't be having children, or there has to be something in the mix there. And then the other thing I wonder about is, when they say someone is God-fearing, I think that it doesn't mean that they're religious necessarily, but I guess that they have that conscience.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the phrases that we're going to be looking at, because, I think that fear of consequences is sort of my take on this. And I think a lot of the more traditional view might be, fear of God, which kind of reminds me of, the stereotypical, angry neighbor or grandfather or father, oh, put the fear of God into you, and
right.
Yeah, so have Karen and then Harry.
So I just want to clarify, are you asking if fear is what motivates people to move from the evil inclination to the good inclination? If it's fear of consequences and or fear of retribution in the afterlife that motivates us towards away from evil and towards good?
I wasn't asking either of those questions, but those are both kind of part of the mix and part of the conversation when you start getting into this discussion of the fear of God, the fear of heaven. And there are a lot of traditional Jewish sources which say, it's like if you aren't, what this means is that if you're not good, that you are going to suffer in the world to come, even if you don't, suffer any consequences today. And that's not part of my kind of theology. That's not part of my personal take on things. I think that's a poor motivator of behavior is, fear of retribution or fear of punishment, either now or in the future. But it is there are some Jewish sources, there are some Mussar sources that that go down that road and make that argument. What's your take on this?
Mine, or is that a general question to everyone?
That was a question to you.
I do think that on one level, fear of any type of consequence, whether it's from a supreme being or from the person that we're interacting with or the situation that we're interacting with, that a negative consequence for some people is a motivator to lean towards the good inclination.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Harry, you had your hand up.
Well, one of the question is, who is defining evil and good? Where is that evil and good coming from? Because in some societies, you would think lying is evil, but in some societies, that's a requirement and it's good. Such as the election isn't a great example. For most people, that's evil, but for some people or some groups, it's good. So I guess it's situational when you define it.
Well, so two things I should clarify. Like one is like one part of monotheism, one part of Jewish practice is there is kind of a definition of right behavior. You know, it's what's in the teachings of the Torah. It's what, you know, our tradition teaches. Now, we may disagree actually and look at the same phrase and disagree on what that is, but there's definitely like, there's not sort of a belief that good and evil are relative, but good and evil are more Christian terms than Jewish terms. What we are talking about is the good inclination and the evil inclination. And so this applies to Karen's comment as well. It's like my inclination to be compassionate and do something good versus my inclination to just look away, you know, look away. Like there's the homeless person or the child who has a sign up and a bowl for food or says, please buy some extra groceries and put them in my cart here. And my good inclination would be, oh, wow, that is someone who's really suffering. I am going to, you know, buy some extra food and give it to them. But within the same brain, there's sort of like maybe thoughts that are like, oh, why doesn't this person get a job? Somebody else is going to help. Do they really need it? How do I know they're not driving a Mercedes? So these are sort of the give and take within our head. And there's something called a choice point, a Behira point, which that's where we're deciding. Am I going to sort of follow, you know, the good angel on, you know, the good on one shoulder or the kind of negative on the other?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure. It's good to spend some time on kind of some of these foundational and fundamental ideas, because part of the reason why we do a Mussar practice is to kind of think about in these different situations, well, how am I, like some branches of Mussar, it's all about the good inclination and evil inclination. Like every situation is, well, where's my evil inclination directing me? Where's my good inclination directing me? You know, others, it's kind of more in the background. So I personally do find it really useful. And sometimes if I have a thought, I'm like, well, is that coming from the evil inclination or the good inclination? So anyway, the reason why I think that fear is kind of a little bit of a part of the evil inclination sometimes, where you can also think of the evil inclination as kind of our own dysfunctions that are trying to kind of slow us down and get us off track. So may I again have someone to read the bullets on the slide? Again, coming back to this idea of Yirah. Jane, go for it.
What is Yirah? Yirah does not translate directly to English. It can be either fear or awe. Yirah of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, from Proverbs. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Awe of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So what do you notice? Like if you just, and often like in the prayer book, it just gets translated as fear. But very often wherever you see fear, you can substitute the word awe.
Mhm.
So what's the difference? Does it make a difference? How does it make a difference? Think about fear versus awe. Yeah, Jane.
Well, I think fear can stop you and limit you, whereas awe, I think of awe as being sort of an overwhelming sense of amazement and appreciation, and I don't see it as something that would stop you from behaving in a good way.
Yeah, sometimes fear could hold us back from doing something that might be good or helpful.
Hi, it's Martin.
Hi, Martin. This is
Hi,
Annie.
Martin. I'm gonna mute you. Okay, Joanne. And then
So I was thinking of fear, and I think, and I'd have to look in the actual, Torah language. When the 10 Commandments are given, it's like honor your father and mother,
Mhm.
and in that way, because, and then in Leviticus, it's like the mother comes first, and it might be Yirah, I don't know, but because the explanation is in your mother and father, because people might have a tendency more to honor their mother and fear their father, and so the Torah switches it around, because you should have awe, and or fear towards your mother as well.
I think for that particular one, it's kavod. It's not Yirah
Okay.
for that particular
Yeah.
commandment, but I think it shows up a lot. Yirah shows up a lot in the Torah.
No,
for
but
sure.
kavod in honor, but then in Leviticus it says something different, a little different, and I think it's fear.
Okay. All right. Karen and then Jane.
Now I'll have to go look it up. And I'm going
So as far as fear is concerned in Yirah, I understand that to be different. There are two different types of fear. That one type is sheer panic and dread, but that the fear in Yirah is fear with a sense of exhilaration. For instance, if you've hiked 3/4 of the way up a mountain and you're at a cliff and you really sense that you could fall, you have a sense of dread, but that's not Yirah/fear. But if you're standing at that edge of the cliff, not afraid of falling, but looking out and up instead of down, that sense of fear includes an exhilarating feeling of awe, of majesty. And I think that those are two different definitions of fear. And so the Yirah is where you have that sense of fear, but at the same time, it's a sense of awe or reverence and majesty at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing kind of Yirah as a whole. as a whole. And so we're trying to today, and by the way, this is a difficult one. So this is like Yirah as a whole, and even each piece of it are a little bit challenging. And I think you rightly say it is distinct from just utter panic and terror. There's a tornado and I'm hiding in my basement, or there's some armed thugs and I'm running away from them. So that's why it's fear of consequences, because it is, what is the, Mussar is a practice of personal elevation and personal behavior. So how does this impact kind of my own spiritual journey?
Yeah.
So we have Jane and then Harry.
Well, just this morning, I was listening to a podcast that was talking about fear as a motivator and how it's been used in public health campaigns to try to get people to stop doing a behavior that's detrimental, like to stop smoking, to stop using drugs. And they gave the example, one example was that ad, that PSA where this is your brain on drugs, and they had the egg frying in the pan. Other things like that. So it was like using fear for a good purpose. But they also talked about how it can, if it's too much fear, it can just freeze you in your tracks and you don't do anything different.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it seems to me in like regarding, the commandments and the mitzvot, it seems like it's a mixture of fear and awe. Like it helps to have some fear of what's going to happen if you don't do it. But if it's only based on fear, that God's like big brother watching you and you're going to be struck down immediately if you don't do this or that, without the awe thing, without the appreciation of the divine, then I think it sort of makes it on a very well, the opposite of sacred kind of plane. The word is eluding me at the moment. But
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I think that was well said,
The
Jane. Thank
opposite
you.
of sacred, profane, or
Profane, yeah.
yeah.
Harry.
Yeah, I was just thinking, when you talk about fear and awe, I was originally thinking that it was one extreme to the other. Like on one side you have fear, on the other side you have awe, and obviously you want to be somewhere in the middle. Not fearful and not always in awe, because you can't function if you're always in awe. Is that a fair way of looking at it? But when I look at their book, you have it this way. You have the one end, you have risk averse paralyzed is one end of fear of consequences. The other is reckless rash.
Yeah, let's put that up. Because no, this is, and at the beginning of the chapter, I told the story about a piano teacher who had the students play just with the right hand or just with the left hand. And it was only later, once they learned the whole piece with each hand separately, that they put them back together. So this was kind of an experiment to say, well, what if we tried to do that with Yirah? So I created separate spectrums for each. And so the fear of consequences, well, if we don't have any fear, like we can do whatever we want without consequences, that can lead to recklessness or rashness, as you say. But then if we have too much fear, and somebody alluded to this earlier, then suddenly we are, we can just become paralyzed and risk averse. It's like, oh, well, I'm in this terrible job, and well, if I start looking for another job, what if somebody finds out, and then I could get fired, and then what if the new job is even worse? And so does that help?
Yeah, now I see it now. So awe and fear are not opposites.
No.
No.
No. They are not. Let me check the time. So I had talked in my email about showing the other 4 things that we could be worried about. And did you find what you were looking for, Joanne? I saw you raised your hand.
Yes. Yes, chapter 19, verse 3, in the English, I'm trying to find it in Hebrew. Oh yeah. Ish imo ba'aviv teyira'u. So that's Yirah.
Yeah.
You shall fear every man, his mother, and his father, and you shall keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God.
Huh.
So yes, Yirah, because it's usually the father that's feared and the mother that's honored. So the Torah reverses it.
Yeah. Or it could be translated, be in awe of your father and mother.
Mother and father.
Mother and father.
That's the point. To put the mother first on that one.
Gotcha.
That's all.
So I don't want to spend a lot of time here because I want us to get to our breakout groups, but as I say, I promised in my email that I would show this. So this is from Orchat Tzadikim, The Ways of the Righteous. It was written by an anonymous female author in the Middle Ages. And so it was talking more about fear, but here they're saying, well, what are things where it's okay to be afraid of? And one is that your deeds are not commensurate with your wisdom. So you kind of know better and you keep doing things anyway. Or if someone isn't wise, they should worry about not having the ability to kind of probe their spiritual curriculum. They just don't have the tools to kind of look within and figure things out. And then if someone is honored, they must be careful not to rejoice in that honor. We don't want our ego to get inflated by praise and other stuff. And this one I also think is really interesting. If they're wise, but people don't like them, they should worry that being despised will prevent people from accepting their advice. And, back in, the same corporate environment, I was pretty arrogant. This was 10, 15 years ago, and I was very full of myself and my abilities. And so I didn't care if people didn't like me, but it held me back. And I think if it's, you're really smart, but people aren't relating to you, it's worth trying to figure out what's going on there. So any thoughts or comments about this? Susan, did you start to raise your hand or were you just?
Sorry, I was just waving to somebody coming in.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to bring the share back up. And for our breakout groups, what we're going to discuss today is this quote from Rav Kook, which is, "It is forbidden for religious behavior to compromise a personal, natural, or moral sensibility. If it does, our fear of heaven is no longer pure. Religious inspiration should elevate our moral sense, not diminish it." So in the breakout groups, I'd love for you to talk about this. And have you ever found religion having an impact on your moral sensibility? Has it ever helped you feel kind of more moral, or is it, have you found that religion kind of goes against your personal sensibilities? And again, please do talk about like your own personal experiences. And I don't think it's as helpful to say, well, I see some religions who argue A, B, and C, which really seems immoral to me, because I'm sure we could all come up with examples how other people are getting it wrong. But in your experience, is it something that's helpful or not? Does that make sense? All right, let me open the breakout rooms.
Craig,
Yeah.
Who said this? Who says it's forbidden? This rabbi just says it? I mean, there's nothing, there's no law or any, is this something he thinks that's his position?
Yeah, that's his position.
Okay, just want to make sure if it's, okay, got it.
Yeah. All right. So the rooms are open. You should see a join breakout room button on your screen. These aren't recorded. It's all confidential. And this is where we end our streaming for the day. So please, thank you so much for joining us. Joanne, are you going to join the breakout?
Yeah.
So please pop over to American Mussar. Hey everyone, welcome back. Well, nice meaty topic today, I think. I would be curious to hear what you talked about, what any insights you had about yourself or about the question. So would anyone care to share? Yeah, Joanne. If you could remember to unmute, please.
Yeah, so we were talking about kashrut and people who keep kosher at home or don't, but not outside, and I was talking about certain things that maybe wouldn't meet my rabbi standard, but it meets my standard because I belong to an Orthodox synagogue, and I want to keep kosher. I mean, in the beginning, it was like for social reasons, so I could have people over. Of course, then my son sort of messed it up when he lived with me, but then I had to redo everything. And that was one of those issues of, taking your rightful space, But, but I found in general, I think the Mussar program has helped me more be true to my real feelings and also not get like angry in a ridiculous way about things that just kind of ruins the day and that kind of thing. So that's what I don't think religion, I mean, Judaism is very difficult if you try to be Orthodox. It's very difficult. And we were talking about how women especially are constricted. And I've been at a conservative shul where I gave, read Torah, a half Torah, I had Aliyot every Shabbos, and I felt sad about giving that up. But then it's like it's a you have to weigh what's more important. And my congregation is a wonderful, supportive, kind, loving people, and that's more important than getting an Aliyah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Joanne.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw your hand go up and down. Did you want to pass or did you have something you were?
Well, I had a few thoughts. So one was maybe an example of when religion can sort of be not congruent with one's moral sensibility is like somebody very close to me decided that it's not right to circumcise a baby. And that bothers me a lot, but that's what seems right to them, and that seems more important to them than the fact that our people has done this for over 5,000 years, and their attitude is well, that's the old way, and that's so there's that. And then about the question about has religion sort of what was it, affected, increased your moral sensibility, changed your moral
Yeah,
sensibilities,
yeah.
something like that. Yeah. Well, I think that studying all the things that I do that have to do with Judaism, I think for sure that sort of adds more detail and more nuance to thinking about all these things, because all the discussion that goes around it, plus what the Talmud has to say and what everybody in the room has to say about it. And so it helps you think about it in much finer brushstrokes than just this broad strokes. What does it mean to be all these things we're studying here, for example? What does that actually mean? They're just labels, but
Mhm.
if you study, then you get more of an understanding of what it means to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Jane. I think what it means to you, nuance and understanding, those are good words to bring into this discussion for sure. Any other thoughts? Let's see, Karen.
I like the structure that my religion brings to me. And within that structure, I get to decide the scale of everything that's there and how it pertains to my life. And I also agree. I think that it provides numerous opportunities for discussion and ideological wrestling and choices to be made. And I think it's really important that the choices that people make, the ones they hold on to most are the ones that they own. And this gives us a lot of opportunity to discuss different sides. And sometimes there's more than two to an issue, so that we can find exactly the stance that we want to own.
Well said, Karen. Yeah, when we choose ourselves, we own it. And there certainly are lots of sides to issues, and the way Judaism approaches it. So thank you.
We have thousands of years of stories that present us with issues to talk about.
Yeah. And it's an ongoing conversation, which we have an opportunity to participate in. And these conversations are for everyone. I mean, not everyone in this community is Jewish, and that's fine. And all are welcome to participate.
Well,
right.
the topic may be the same, but the times are different. And so that changes the conversation every time you have it. Yes?
Yeah. Or we're different, as we get ready to begin a new Mussar cycle again. None of us are in the same place where we were 26 weeks ago when we were last focused on humility. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We are going to close, as we always do, with a short meditation once again to close our sacred space. So please relax in your chair and close your eyes. And taking a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. Let's take a moment of gratitude to those other souls who have joined us on this journey today. May we find community here and in other parts of our lives that support our values, bring us joy, and make us feel seen and loved. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.